I'm here with Hans Bos, Chief Technology Officer at Microsoft Netherlands. Hans, how is Microsoft involved in blockchain technology at the moment?
In many ways, from infrastructure to business development or concept development up to full project deployment. And in many industries, so we're working with blockchain in public sector, in the pharmacy, in the energy sector, in manufacturing, supply chains. So there are many aspects to Microsoft's involvement in blockchain.
Okay, and what is your role in all those involvements?
Personally?
Yes.
My personal role, I would say, and I often use the analogy at PowerPoint level. So the majority of my conversations are about making customers aware of what blockchain is and also what blockchain isn't, so that they can make the best decision of or on how blockchain fits to their business problem or can be part of their solutions. So in the majority of my conversations, I try to explain what the blockchain is, how the blockchain can be helpful to address business problems, and also how the Microsoft infrastructure, and then usually I'm emphasizing Microsoft Azure as an element in that infrastructure. Microsoft Azure is part of the solution to speed up the process of getting from idea to ultimate your end result of the project.
Okay. You were here last year.
I was, yeah. Yeah, not here.
Well, in Delft anyways, in a technical deep dive.
Yeah.
What kind of milestones have you seen happen in the last year?
In the last year? I think last year I emphasized, or I pointed out that at the Exact, it was the event last year, I pointed out that the discussions had changed last year. Whereas many of the blockchain conversations last year started with pointing out Bitcoin as an example, and so Bitcoin is fantastic, what about blockchain? And last year the conversation changed from Bitcoin as a starting point to blockchain as a starting point. This year, I would say the biggest change is that the conversations have moved on from blockchain as a technology discussion, kind of like emphasizing what is blockchain, how does blockchain work, what is the algorithm, what consensus mechanisms do you use. The conversation has moved on, maturity if you will, to blockchain is fantastic. Now how does it fit the solution and how can it connect my blockchain infrastructure or solution to my database or to my other elements in the process. So the conversation has further matured, if you will, from Bitcoin to blockchain and now from blockchain to solution.
Okay, so is blockchain the solution for a lot of companies?
Good question. It's of course, so blockchain is an element to the solution. Blockchain is not the solution. It's by the way, there's a great video by the CTO of Microsoft Azure, Mark Russinovich, available on YouTube, where he says that in many situations people tend to think of blockchain is the answer. Now, what was the question? And that's the kind of attitude, the mood that we do not need. That's not what we want. So blockchain can be part of a solution if you have a conversation with a customer or if you're involved in a process where multiple parties are involved, where you're handling data in a trusted context, where you need to have trust in either the third-party institution or in the infrastructure. So there are a number of questions that you can ask, and if you address those questions affirmatively, then possibly blockchain could be part of your solution. But blockchain itself isn't the solution. Blockchain is generating a lot of conversation, but some business problems will have a good fit with blockchain.
Okay. How do you help your customers then find out if it's useful once you've answered those questions affirmatively?
Once you answer the questions affirmatively, you're already aware that blockchain is probably going to be part of the solution. But in some
what happens next?
What happens next? After you know that blockchain is part of the solution, then we usually try to get as fast as possible to a proof of concept, to demonstrate and explain what the possibilities, but also the limitations are of the current blockchain scenarios and blockchain technologies. And that's where indeed Microsoft infrastructure comes in very handily and very competitively differentiating. Because in the Microsoft Azure environment, you've got technologies like blockchain as a service, where you can go to your Azure environment, portal.azure.com, and you can search for blockchain and you immediately find a number of virtual machines with, for example, Ethereum consortia pre-installed or pre-configured. And you just, with the press of a button, not exactly, you have to fill in the number of parameters, but with the press of a button you generate a full Ethereum consortium. So that's where Azure and the blockchain as a service comes in very handily. But we also know that many of the proof of concepts and many of the ultimate projects are not satisfied with just the ledger, just the Ethereum infrastructure, for example. So they need to connect to additional infrastructures, additional services like databases or business intelligence systems or authentication systems. And that's where, for example, our new project, our recently announced project earlier this calendar year, Project Lexington comes in very handily, because that's a set of generic templates that if you want to generate a blockchain-based solution for asset management or asset exchange, you can use a Lexington template to generate that full reference architecture for example, asset exchange.
Does that work for just a single company, or do you need to bring on board a whole set of companies that work together?
So you can use it within your company, within your own company, but you can also use it and leverage it, and that's usually what's the case with many blockchain implementations. You can leverage it with a consortium of multiple companies. So
how does that affect the speed of your proof of concept?
Getting multiple companies involved in your proof of concept. That depends, because that's the human element in many of conversations, or the cultural element in many conversations. The more stakeholders you have, the longer your meetings tend to last. So it's challenging, but having the proof of concept sped up this way by using Azure as an infrastructure, by using blockchain as a service, by using Project Lexington as a concept for generating reference models, that's helpful. But multiple companies, multiple people involved in your conversation, that tends to add a couple of minutes to your meeting. Yeah.
A couple of minutes. You also announced the Coco framework.
Microsoft did earlier this year in August.
What will that bring to the blockchain world?
That's a good point. So a lot of the Coco framework is still under development and in work in progress, if you will. So things may change between now and the final release, because at this time we've only announced the Coco framework and published a technical document, a briefing document about it. It's based on many conversations we've had with enterprise customers. So you also have small business customers, you have individual interest or political interest in blockchain, but with enterprise customers, many of them have asked us, so this blockchain is great, but what about the latency challenge? There's a latency challenge with many blockchain implementations, or a speed challenge. Enterprise customers are looking for database-like performance from a blockchain environment, which the majority of blockchain implementations simply cannot offer, cannot achieve, because of their basis in proof of work kind of like models. Now what Coco does, in general, to generalize, what Coco does, it addresses many of the enterprise barriers, the enterprise demands that we have learned about for the last year. As a technology concept, Coco leverages the hardware-based, or it could be hardware-based, trusted execution environment concept. So Intel, for example, has a solution for this that we leverage in the Azure environment, and we can create a secure or a trusted enclave within the Azure environment for blockchains to run inside of that enclave. And by running inside that trusted enclave, we can skip or remove the proof of work barrier or challenge, if you will, from a time and latency perspective. So what you have with Coco is it's a framework. It's not a replacement for Ethereum, for example, or other models. It's a framework that can leverage or that you can use around or underneath Ethereum. Coco leverages the trusted execution environment as, if you will, an alternative to the proof of work, thus speeding up enormously, almost 100-fold in practice, or in pilot so far, almost 100-fold speed improvement over common Ethereum
Does it also make the blockchain permissioned instead of permissionless? Does it affect the proof of work aspects of a blockchain?
I'm not sure I'm in a position to address that question yet.
Okay, because it's still under development.
For one, yeah.
Okay.
But what it does is it doesn't replace the consensus model. There's still a need for consensus. It does replace the need for a proof of work as an element in your blockchain implementation.
All right. So let's take a broader perspective. What are your thoughts on how the blockchain ecosystem has been developing and is developing right now?
Oh, it's growing in absolute terms, and it's growing in maturity, I think. So if your question is so what about the ecosystem in general? There are more people involved. There are more different businesses and companies involved. The number of technologies, it's almost like daily or weekly innovations and inventions. So I think it's maturing rapidly. And that's nice.
Would there be any areas where you think we can still improve a lot?
Improve. Yeah, it's still a very young technology, so all of the areas, all of the above can be improved, or still benefit from improvements. My first expectation would be to have the Coco so far announcement from August this year, to have it released and available via GitHub as open source code to the market and the industry, and see where that takes us and what that brings us, because I think that's a big step forward in maturity and making blockchain implementations enterprise ready.
Okay. Let's look at the upcoming blockchain hackathon. How do you think, how do you expect it to help further develop the ecosystem?
Yeah, so that's in March or April, right?
Yes.
The hackathon, yeah. So the concept of a hackathon fits nicely, I would say, with the idea and the approach that Microsoft has in speeding up the deployment of blockchain-based solutions. So the hackathon usually is a very good instrument to demonstrate what the potential, but also the limits are of your blockchain idea or concept. So I like the concept of hackathon, and I think the forthcoming hackathon in March or April in the Netherlands, it's going to be very helpful to demonstrate to multiple industries, to multiple business leaders, to multiple decision makers, what blockchain is actually about.
Final question, what would your pro tips be for anyone preparing to take part in the hackathon?
Go and look up on your favorite search engine, Microsoft Azure, Blockchain as a Service, and Project Lexington.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dankjewel. Ik heb nog 3 losse vragen.
Yep.
En in die antwoorden moet je niet verwijzen naar wat je eerder had gezegd, maar gewoon op zichzelf staan. En die antwoorden zullen we gebruiken in promotiefilmpjes voor de hackathon om zoveel mogelijk deelnemers mee te krijgen. So, first question. According to you, what is the biggest promise that blockchain technology holds for the world?
The biggest promise. So many of the conversations we have are about trust in organizations, trust in technology, trust in people, trust in processes. And the biggest promise of blockchain is that it can provide an answer to many, maybe not all, but to many of those trust questions.